in Pokemon Sun and Moon, the series takes place in the Alolan region, which is heavily based on Hawaii. It's meant to basically be Pokemon Hawaii. And I see Mr. Mime wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And then I started wondering about, like, do Americans, when they go to Hawaii, all wear Hawaiian shirts? Like, it seems obvious, because everyone goes there on vacation. So you go to Hawaii, you wear your Hawaiian shirt out in the sun. And then I wondered, do Hawaiians actually wear Hawaiian shirts? Are those, like, actually a part of their culture? Or if they are, like, are our shirts just, like, meant to look like what a Hawaiian shirt looks like, but it's not actually what a Hawaiian shirt is, you know? Do they wear these? And if not, are they annoyed that A, Americans always come to their country wearing tacky-ass clothes, and B, that they are called Hawaiian shirts? Because this seems like the internet buzz term, cultural appropriation. Isn't that what a Hawaiian shirt is? An appropriation of Hawaiian culture? Or is it just actually what they are? Like, are they just actually, like, literally the shirts that are worn in Hawaii? Because there's a thin line between cultural appropriation and cultural promotion. A thin line between appropriating and branding, where sometimes the country wants you to think that that's a Hawaiian shirt. Yeah, Hawaiian shirts, because they're fun. Everybody wants something that's fun. Good branding. Gets people out to Hawaii, you know? Hawaii seems like a real relaxed place since they got those Hawaiian shirts. And, you know, Japan is really big on this. Japan, anytime somebody talks about culturally appropriating Japan, I'm like, dude, have you seen the way they treat their own culture as a product? They want it to be appropriated. They want it to be branded because, literally the government wants that. Like, there's a huge funding in a government effort to spread Japanese culture around the world, and especially anime culture, because culture has been the biggest export of Japan. Like, the biggest thing that they've been able to give the rest of the world is their culture, more so than any other resources. And so it's really good for Japan's, GDP for them to, like, sell lots of shit overseas of culture product. So they want to emphasize the Japanese-ness of their products so that we have to buy those products from Japan, So they flanderize their own culture constantly in their culture products. And the perfect example of this from a recent anime was Princess Principal, where it was really hilarious because the show takes place in London. And it's like a fictional steampunk London that has the Berlin Wall in it for some reason. I don't know how much of it even seeks to accurately depict London, but there's a Japanese character who's in the series, and there's a whole episode of fish out of water comedy about her having all these wacky Japanese customs that don't fit into the Western society, and like painting, like, she's the most stereotypical Japanese person imaginable, Japanese 1890s person imaginable. And so, like, yeah, that's all on them. They did that. We didn't do that. They did that. So, I don't know if that's just because they want to make Japan look cool. Like, they're just proud of their unique shit, so they want you to think it's awesome and try to copy it. But anyways, so I was thinking about cultural appropriation with regards to this Hawaiian shirt. Then we get later into the episode, and Ash is given the Z bracelet, the thing that allows him to use the Z moves on the Pokemon. And he gets this from Tapu Koko, which is this legendary Pokemon that comes to Ash, like, because he's a strong trainer, and gives him this bracelet that allows him to do Z moves. No one else on the island is familiar with this thing, like, showing up. Like, it's not a common occurrence that this guy appears before people on the island. When Ash tells the other people in Pokemon school that that he saw what is in Japanese referred to as kapukokeko. Kapukokeko. He has seen Kapukokeko, and nobody else in the class has. They are all like, oh, he's never appeared before me. And immediately it made me think of the trope of the white guy who shows up in some kind of exotic culture and immediately does their culture better than them. In Japan, this trope is about showing up in a video game world or a fantasy world, and a Japanese guy doing the job better than anybody in the fantasy world can. Which high fantasy is analogous to Western culture in Japan, so, you know, it's just basically a reversal. You know, there's so many stories, like, Avatar is always the one that comes to mind. It's like the big one that happened recently, where it's like this white dude from America, you know, goes to a foreign culture, masters being one of them, and then eventually is the leader of the tribe. And it's a pretty common trope, and it's pretty, you know, this is one that gets a lot of flack. It's a trope that people make fun of a lot these days when it comes up. So when I thought about the fact that Pokemon has that trope, it was really funny to me. But then I also realized nobody will ever bring this up because it's not a big deal. You know, like, nobody who's watching Pokemon Sun and Moon is going to give a shit about that. And especially because it's a kid's show. Like, nobody's going to hold this thing up to higher criticism. And, you know, that criticism's not even felt by a huge amount of people. But it was interesting for me to think about the fact that I came up with that criticism. And it's not an invalid criticism. You know, like, I can totally see why that could bother somebody. Not just about Pokemon, but about any piece of media. That, like, you know, the white guy shows up and does the culture better. And which is, you know, unrealistic and somewhat jingoistic. It's weird. I don't know if that's the right use for that word. Apologies if that's a racist slur that I didn't realize, because it kind of sounds like one, but I don't think it is. So, you know, I could see why this could legitimately bother people. And it's something that I observed, but it didn't bother me. And I feel like a lot of reviews on the internet would focus on a detail like that. Like, a lot of reviews find reasons to dislike something that even if you saw that in the series or in the movie or whatever, you would never have, like, thought that it was a bad thing, or, like, it doesn't bother you enough to even be worthy of mention or to come to the forefront of your mind. Whereas to some people, it can be a major knock, like a point docking knock on a show. You know, I've seen people, like, make, like, a great example would be Movie Bob. When he does his Really That Good videos, there's always a section towards the back where he addresses, like, essentially, I want to say toxic elements in the work, or he'll just criticize it for, like, you know, misogyny or racism or something like that. For instance, in his video on National Lampoon's no, not National Lampoon's, what am I thinking about? Christmas Story. In his video on Christmas Story, he talks about how there's the racist scene with the fa-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra. And he makes a big deal about how the scene is so racist and unnecessary. But, like, while I can easily observe that it is a racist scene, I also think it's really funny, and I like the scene. I don't know if anyone's actually offended by the scene. I've never heard of anybody actually being offended by that scene in that movie. I've heard people describe that it is racist and, like, that it should be offensive. But I've never heard of anybody, like, any Chinese person being like, oh, I really hate that movie because that's in it, you know? But it's not that I don't understand. Like, I think it's a valid criticism. Yeah, it's a super racist scene. I can see why some people wouldn't want to watch the movie. But it's not something that would affect me or enter my mind, like, as a criticism of it. So, it's funny to me, there's a lot of criticism I could make for stuff that I just don't. That I don't because it's not relevant to me. And it's kind of funny because I feel like some critics would go out of their way to find everything. For instance, YMS. He's the type of critic who, whether these details particularly matter to him or not, he will bring up every nitpick about a movie. Because, like, what he sees himself as doing is basically laying out all of the positives and all of the negatives. You know, he's not just choosing to address what he thinks, you know, like, makes his opinion of the film. He just brings up everything about the film. And I've never really done that. I'm not someone who, like, brings in everything. I just select the things that I think are interesting or would actually affect my score. It's just sort of a difference in style, but it's funny that I observe those things. Like, I would never bring that up in a Pokemon Sun and Moon review that fucking, you know, that Ash fits the stereotype of white guy goes to another community and does it better than they do. Like, that would never enter my mind when writing a review. But I'm sure it would for some people.